I stood in my apartment, the kitchen light casting a glow on the sparkling engagement ring resting on the counter. I had dreamed of a future with Natalie, the woman I loved for 3 years. But then she said something that shattered my world. My parents don't accept you. They think I deserve someone better. My heart stopped. I looked into her eyes, waiting for an explanation, a glimmer of hope that she'd laugh and say it was a joke. But no, she was serious, and worse, she was doubting me too. I took a deep breath and with a strange calm replied, "Then you should find someone better." That night, I did something I never thought I would. I left, leaving her and the life we'd built behind. This is my story, not just of betrayal, but of rediscovering myself. Stay with me because this story will make you think. What would you do when the person you love most turns their back on you because of outside prejudices? I'm Ryan, a 28-year-old architect from Ohio. I grew up in a middle-class family where my parents taught me that hard work and kindness were enough for a meaningful life. I paid for college with loans and late-night shifts at a coffee shop. After graduating, I landed a job at an architecture firm in Chicago, not the most prestigious, but enough for me to take pride in my designs. Then I met Natalie at a friend's housewarming party. She was smart, beautiful, ambitious, and we quickly fell for each other. Within a year, we moved into a cozy apartment in Lincoln Park. I proposed to her in our second year under the twinkling lights of Millennium Park on a freezing winter night. She said yes, and I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But not everything was perfect. Natalie's parents, Richard and Caroline, were upper-class elites. They lived in a mansion in North Shore, hosted parties at country clubs, and vacationed in places like the Hamptons or Aspen. I was different. I liked simple evenings watching baseball with friends at Wrigley Field or grabbing a hot dog at Portillo's. Every time I met them, I felt their coldness. Richard would ask things like, "Does your firm work on big projects like the John Hancock Center?" Or Caroline would mention Natalie's ex, a guy now working on Wall Street. I told myself it was just a generational gap, that our love was strong enough to overcome it. Natalie would squeeze my hand under the table, shooting her parents a subtle glare, and I thought we were a team. Looking back, I ignored too many signs. In American culture, especially in cities like Chicago, the pressure of social status and financial success can seep into even the closest relationships. A 2021 study from the University of Chicago found that 35% of couples face issues due to family disapproval, especially when class differences are involved. I didn't realize that Richard and Caroline's words weren't just idle talk, they were planting doubts in Natalie's mind, and I naively believed love would conquer all. That fateful day was an ordinary Thursday in April. I came home after a long client meeting, tired but eager to see Natalie. She was sitting at the kitchen counter, eyes glued to her laptop, unusually quiet. "I had lunch with my parents," she said softly. "I try to keep things light, asking about Richard and Caroline, but then she looked at me and said, 'They're worried about us. They think you're not the best choice for me.'" I set down the beer I was holding, feeling the floor tilt. Worried how, I asked. She hesitated, then continued, "They say your career doesn't have the potential of someone in finance or medicine. That will never have the life I grew up with, that we're from two different worlds." I stood there trying to process her words. We'd known about these differences from the start. I never hid that I was content with my job. I loved designing buildings, giving meaning to people's spaces. I didn't dream of being a millionaire or owning a mansion in Lake Forest. But what hurt most was when Natalie admitted, "I think they're right. You're too okay with being ordinary. You never talk about climbing the ladder or starting your own firm." Those words cut like a knife. I never saw myself as ordinary, but I was proud of what I'd achieved on my own. I asked, my voice low but steady, "So, what do you think, Natalie?" She looked down, avoiding my eyes. I think maybe they're right. In that moment, a cold clarity washed over me. No tears, no arguments, just a painful truth. The woman I loved, the one I planned to marry, had chosen her parents' opinion over our love. I said, "If you and your parents feel that way, then you should find someone better." She froze as if she hadn't expected me to say that. "Ryan, I'm not saying we should break up. I'm just having doubts." But to me, it was clear, doubting my worth because of her parents' words, that wasn't the love I wanted. I went to the bathroom, letting the hot shower wash away the chaos in my heart. A plan started forming in my mind. I didn't want to argue or beg, I wanted to act. That night, while Natalie slept, I quietly got up. I grabbed a gym bag I'd packed, logged into our landlord's portal, and began transferring the lease to her name. The lease was originally in my name because my credit was better, but now I wanted her to take responsibility. I knew it needed her signature and the landlord's approval, but I started the process. Next, I accessed our bank account and canceled Natalie's access to our shared credit card used for household expenses. I wrote a short letter explaining I was leaving, that I'd initiated the lease transfer, and she had a month to decide whether to keep the apartment or find a new place. I left the letter and my key on the counter and walked out. I called Mark, my best friend, and asked if I could crash at his place for a few days. Mark, being the solid friend he is, agreed without hesitation. When I arrived at his apartment at 1 a.m., he opened the door. Hair a mess, wearing only boxers. "You okay?" he asked. "Not really," I replied, "but I will be." We sat on his couch, sipping beers, and I told him everything. Mark didn't urge me to go back or fix things. He just said, "Her loss," and clinked his bottle with mine. In that moment, I knew I'd made the right choice. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. Text calls, voicemails from Natalie growing increasingly frantic. "Where are you? Call me back, now. I can't believe you just left like that." Then the landlord called about the lease transfer. "I can't afford this place alone." And finally, "You canceled the credit card. How am I supposed to buy groceries?" The messages made me both sad and amused. Natalie always prided herself on being financially independent, but in reality, she relied on her entry-level publishing salary while her parents covered her student loans, car payments, and an emergency fund she rarely touched. Now faced with reality, she was panicking. I didn't respond. Instead, I called my boss and took a few days off. I started looking for a new apartment, eventually finding a small but clean one-bedroom in Wicker Park. The rent was higher than my share of the old place, but I could manage with a recent project bonus. I stayed at Mark's, sleeping on his couch, and began rebuilding my life. I updated my address, ordered essentials like bedding and kitchen supplies, and had them delivered to Mark's. I also arranged for a moving company to pick up my belongings on a day Natalie was at work with Mark, supervising, to ensure only my stuff was taken. Meanwhile, Natalie's messages shifted from anger to pleading. "Please talk to me, we can work this out." I didn't mean it, I was just stressed about wedding plans. I responded only once. "On the 5th day, I'll pick up the rest of my stuff next week. The bills are paid through the month, and you have time to take over the lease if you want to keep the apartment. Let me know when you're not home so I can move out." She replied instantly, "Don't do this. I love you." But to me, those words came too late. On the 6th day, I got a surprising call from Richard, Natalie's father. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Ryan," he said, his usual arrogance gone. "We need to talk. Natalie's not okay." I replied, "That's not my problem anymore." He sighed, admitting he'd said things to Natalie he shouldn't have, and asked to meet. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop, mostly out of curiosity. When I arrived, I was shocked to see not just Richard and Caroline, but Natalie and her brother Ethan too. The whole family was there like an emergency intervention. Natalie looked drained, her eyes red far from her usual polished self. Richard spoke first. "I owe you an apology. What I said about you was unfair." Caroline added, "Natalie's a wreck. We've never seen her like this. She really loves you." Ethan, an architecture enthusiast, chimed in. "I looked you up. You're the lead designer on the Riverside project. That's huge, you know?" I shrugged. "I work for passion, not to impress my girlfriend's family." Finally, Natalie spoke, her voice trembling. "I was wrong, Ryan. I was stupid and let them get to me. I've regretted it since the moment you left. They begged me to give her another chance, but I felt empty." "Why the change of heart now?" I asked. "Because I might succeed, or because Natalie's hurting Richard avoided my gaze but said, because I've never seen my daughter this heartbroken." But I knew the truth. They only changed their tune when they realized I wasn't the failure they thought. I looked at Natalie, who was trying to touch my hand. "I was wrong," she said. "I love you not for what you do or how much you earn." But I shook my head. "You didn't defend me when they said I wasn't good enough. You agreed with them. That was your choice." I stood up, leaving them in the coffee shop, ignoring Natalie calling my name. 6 months later, I'd started a new life. My Riverside project earned praise in architecture magazines, and my firm promoted me to junior partner with a significant raise. I bought a small condo in a building. I designed a place that was truly mine. Natalie still texted occasionally, but I didn't reply. Her parents sent an expensive bottle of scotch with an apology note, but I gave it to Mark for his birthday party. I wasn't angry, but I didn't need them in my life. This story isn't just about, me and Natalie. It's about how we often let prejudices about money status or success cloud the true value of a person. I once thought love was enough, but I learned that love requires loyalty. Natalie chose her parents' opinion over me, and that showed me I deserved someone who'd fight for me no matter what anyone said. I want to share another true story to show how common this is. My friend Sarah dated a guy from a wealthy Gold Coast family. His parents thought her teaching job was beneath her and constantly compared her to women with higher status careers. Eventually, her boyfriend started doubting her, saying she needed to be more ambitious. Sarah left, and now she's engaged to someone who loves her for who she is, not her job or income. Sarah's story and mine remind us that true love isn't based on superficial measures. I remember one night at Mark's, staring out the window, wondering if I was too harsh on Natalie. Should I have given her a chance? But then I recalled how she called me ordinary. I remembered how she didn't stand up for me. And I realized forgiving didn't mean going back. Forgiving meant freeing myself to live without that pain. Now, sitting in my new apartment looking out at Chicago's skyline, I feel at peace. I'm still searching for the right person, but I know what I want: someone who chooses me not for how much I earn or what I do, but for who I am. And if you're watching this, I want you to ask yourself, who are you with? Do they make you feel enough, or are you constantly proving your worth? If you've been betrayed, remember that walking away isn't failure. It's victory because you chose yourself. I could go on about this journey, about sleepless nights, days, questioning if I did the right thing. Once I passed our old apartment and saw the living room light still on, I wondered what Natalie was doing, if she was okay. But then I kept walking because my life wasn't there anymore. I learned that sometimes you have to let go of the familiar to find something better. And I'm still on that path, one day at a time. Keep following because I have more to share. What tough choices have you made in love? Leave a comment because I want to hear your story. And if this video resonates, hit like and share it so others can learn something too. We'll keep this story going. because the journey to rediscover yourself never stops. Continuing the narrative with plausible developments, maintaining the American cultural context, characters, and the theme of loyalty and self-worth. One evening, months after the breakup, I ran into an old colleague at a bar in Logan Square. He bought me a beer and asked about Natalie. I gave him the short version and he shook his head. I went through something similar. My ex's family pushed her to find someone better. She listened, and now she's miserable. I'll say, you did the right thing walking away. That conversation got me thinking about how many people face pressure from family or society to chase standards that don't matter. In America, we're obsessed with the American dream, big house, fancy car, prestigious job. But what happens when that dream makes you lose yourself? I joined a running group at a nearby park, a way to stay healthy and clear my mind. One day I met Lisa, a nurse at Northwestern Hospital. We got a talking, and she shared how her family disapproved of her ex-boyfriend, a freelance musician. My parents wanted me to marry a doctor or lawyer, she said, but I loved him because he made me laugh every day. I fought for him, but he left because he couldn't handle the pressure. Lisa's story made me think of Natalie. If she'd stood up for me, would things be different? But I knew what ifs only held me back. Time passed and I threw myself into my career. The Riverside project wasn't just a success, it opened doors. I was invited to speak at an architecture conference in New York, something I never dreamed of back in Ohio. Standing on that stage, looking out at a room full of peers, I realized how far I'd come. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I love my work. I wondered if Natalie saw the articles about my project. But then I reminded myself it didn't matter anymore. One day, Mark invited me to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. We sat in the bleachers eating hot dogs and joking like we were back in college. He asked, "You ever think about going back to her?" I took a sip of beer, staring at the field. No, I said, not because I'm angry, because I know I deserve better. Mark nodded and we watched the game. In that moment, I felt a weight lift, like I'd truly let go of the past. My story isn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. I'm still looking for the right person, but I'm not rushing. I've learned that love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone to walk beside you on your journey. And if you're watching this, I hope you'll remember you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. The right person will see you for who you are and cherish it. Continued as requested with additional realistic scenarios to extend the narrative while preserving the cultural context, characters, and message about loyalty and self-worth. I stood there in the golden sunlight of Wrigley Field with the crowd roaring as the Cubs scored. Mark's words echoed in my head, and I felt a peace I hadn't known since leaving Natalie. But life, as I learned, never lets you stay comfortable for long. A few weeks after that game, something unexpected happened, a twist that forced me to face the past in a way I wasn't prepared for. One Saturday afternoon, while I was at the office finalizing drawings for a new project in West Loop, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, Chicago's 312 area code. I answered thinking it might be a client or colleague, but the voice on the other end froze me. Ryan, it's Natalie. My heart pounded. I hadn't heard her voice directly since that coffee shop meeting 6 months ago. "I know you don't want to talk," she said quickly, her voice trembling, "but I need to see you just once. It's important." I wanted to hang up, but something in her tone, a desperation I'd never heard, made me pause. "What's this about?" I asked, keeping my voice cold. "Not over the phone. Please, Ryan. I'm begging you." Against every instinct screaming at me to say no, I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop in Andersonville, a neutral spot that didn't carry memories of our past. When I walked in, Natalie was already there, sitting in a corner wearing a simple sweater, no makeup, far from the polished girl I once knew. She stood when she saw me, her eyes flickering with hope and anxiety. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I sat down, keeping my distance. "You got 5 minutes. Talk." She took a deep breath and started, "I know I hurt you and I don't expect forgiveness, but there's something you need to know." After you left, I found out the truth about my parents and about myself. I frowned, unsure if I wanted to hear more. She explained that after I walked out, she started digging through old emails between her and her mom, trying to understand why everything fell apart. And she uncovered a shocking secret. Her parents had deliberately manipulated her to break us up, not just because they thought I wasn't good enough, but because they'd secretly arranged for her to reconnect with her Wall Street ex, hoping she'd upgrade her life. They'd even paid the guy to show up at a family party, staging a chance encounter to sway her. I sat there stunned. "You're saying your parents orchestrated all of this?" Natalie nodded, tears welling up. "They thought they were protecting me, but they were just controlling me. When I found out, I cut contact with them. I moved out of our old apartment, got a smaller place in Uptown, and I'm paying for everything myself. I don't want to live the life they planned for me anymore." She paused, looking directly at me. "But the most important thing is, I realized I was wrong for not standing by you. I'm not here to ask you back. I just want you to know the truth, and I want to apologize sincerely." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, but the part that was hurt warned me to be cautious. Why now? I asked. Why wait until now to tell me? She lowered her head because I needed time to face myself. I had to learn to live without leaning on my parents or on you, and I realized I owed you the truth. She pulled a small box from her bag and slid it toward me. "This is yours." I opened it, and inside was the engagement ring I'd given her. "I couldn't keep it," she said. "It's a part of you, and you deserve it back." In that moment, a wave of emotions hit me. Anger, sadness, but also a touch of relief. I took the ring, feeling its weight, and realized it no longer held the meaning it once did. "Thanks for telling me," I said, standing up. "But I don't need apologies. I just hope you find happiness." I walked out, leaving Natalie there, and as I stepped onto Chicago's streets, I felt like I'd closed a long chapter of my life. But the story didn't end there. A few days later, I got an email from Ethan, Natalie's brother. He wrote, "Ryan, I know you don't want anything to do with our family anymore, but I need to say this. Natalie's telling the truth. My parents went too far, and I'm ashamed I didn't speak up sooner. She's trying to change, and I think you're the only one who can understand that." Attached was an article from a local architecture magazine praising my Riverside project. Ethan added, "I found this and thought you should know how awesome you are. Thanks for inspiring me to pursue my passion for architecture." Ethan's words made me think. I started wondering if I'd been too closed off, too rigid in cutting all ties with Natalie. Not to get back together, but to at least listen. I decided to meet her again, this time at a park by Lake Michigan where we used to walk in our early dating days. When I arrived, Natalie was standing near the shore one, tossing her hair. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, offering a weak smile. I shrugged. "I'm not sure why I'm here either." We walked, talking about trivial things, whether the city work. Then she opened up about her new life. She'd been promoted at her publishing job, was paying her own rent, and had even started a graphic design course to pursue her creative side. "I used to think I needed my parents or you to feel secure," she said, "but now I'm learning to stand on my own." I listened, and for the first time, I saw a different Natalie, not the girl caught between her parents and me, but someone trying to define herself. But then another twist came. As we sat on a bench overlooking the lake, Natalie's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, then at me. "It's my mom," she hesitated, then answered. Putting it on speaker, Caroline's voice came through sharp and cold. "Natalie, what are you doing? We heard you're seeing Ryan again. You can't be serious about him. He'll drag you down." Natalie looked at me, then replied, her voice firm, "Mom, I've told you. I'm not living your way anymore. Ryan's a good person, and if you can't see that, that's your problem." She hung up her hands, shaking slightly. I was stunned. For the first time, Natalie had stood up, not just for herself, but for me. That moment shook me. I wasn't sure I could fully trust her, but I couldn't deny she was trying. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," she said, "but I hope someday we can be friends." I didn't promise anything, but I nodded. "Maybe," I said. We parted ways at the park, and as I drove home, I felt a small shift inside. Not hope for a romantic ending, but a new respect for Natalie's journey. But the drama didn't stop. A month later, I was invited to a charity event downtown where my firm was donating to an affordable housing organization. When I entered the ballroom, I nearly turned around. Natalie was there, not as a guest, but as a volunteer speaking to donors about the project's importance. She saw me, smiled, but didn't approach. Later, a colleague told me Natalie had spent months working with the organization, using her publishing skills to help them fundraise. I didn't know how to feel proud, confused, or both. That night in my apartment, I looked at the engagement ring still in my drawer. I thought about my journey, how I'd learned to love myself before loving anyone else. And I thought about Natalie, how she was trying to rewrite her story. I wasn't sure if we'd have a future together, but I started to believe that sometimes even those who hurt you can change, not to get back together, but to remind you that life is full of surprises. I decided to do something I never thought I would. I texted Natalie, "Thanks for what you did at the event today. I see your effort." She replied instantly, "Thank you, Ryan. That means a lot." And for the first time in a year, I felt a bit of reconciliation, not with Natalie, but with myself. I'm still walking my path, and each day is a step forward. I've learned that love isn't just about finding the right person, but about becoming the best version of yourself. Natalie may be part of my past, but she's also why I'm stronger today. And if you're watching, I want you to think about your own journey. What have you learned from your hurts? How did you rise? Share your story, because we're all writing new chapters, and every chapter is worth telling. Continuing further with realistic developments, maintaining cultural context and themes. The story keeps unfolding like a book where each page brings new surprises, sometimes making me wonder if fate is toying with me. After the text I sent Natalie, I thought it would be a gentle end to a painful chapter. But Chicago, with its windy streets and unpredictable people, seemed to have other plans. One Sunday morning, while jogging along Lake Michigan, enjoying the crisp fall air, my phone buzzed. It was Natalie again. "Ryan, can you meet me now? It's really important." Her voice was urgent, almost panicked. I stopped, my breath forming white clouds in the air. "What's so urgent? It can't wait," I asked, trying to stay calm. I can't say over the phone. "Please, Ryan, I'm at the coffee shop near Lincoln Park. I need you." I stood there, staring at the shimmering lake torn. Part of me wanted to ignore her, keep running, and let the past stay buried. But another part, the curious part, the part that hadn't fully let go, made me agree. When I reached the coffee shop, Natalie was at an outdoor table clutching her coffee like it was her lifeline. She looked frailer than I remembered, but her eyes were resolute. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. I sat down, saying nothing, waiting for her to start. "I don't know how to say this," she began, "but last week I got a letter from my dad. Not an email, a handwritten letter sent to my new apartment. She pulled out a crumpled envelope and slid it toward me. Read it. I think you need to know. I took the letter hesitating. Inside was Richard's firm handwriting, but the contents were almost unbelievable. He confessed to not only trying to break us up, but hiring a private investigator to follow me in our early dating days, looking for weaknesses to prove I wasn't good enough for Natalie. But the bigger shock was that after I left, he reviewed the investigator's report and realized I wasn't just hardworking, but lived with an integrity he'd never had. He wrote, I was wrong to think money defines a man. You taught me that, Ryan, and I'm sorry for destroying my daughter's happiness. I folded the letter, my mind reeling. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Natalie bit her lip. Because I want you to know it wasn't just me who messed up. My parents went too far, and I let them manipulate me. But more than that, I want you to know I'm trying to make things right, not to win you back, but to be a better person. She paused, meeting my eyes. And one more thing. I'm writing an article, a personal story about how family pressure can destroy love. I want your permission to share our story anonymously, but enough for people to understand. I was stunned. Natalie, who once lived in her parents' shadow, now wanted to bare her soul to the world. Are you sure? I asked. This isn't small. It'll piss off your family. She nodded. I know. But I'm tired of living by their rules. I want the story to help others people who are being pressured like I was. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep it private, but I saw the sincerity in her eyes. I'll think about it, I said, standing. Thanks for letting me know. Driving home, I couldn't stop thinking about Richard's letter. The idea that he'd hired a PI to dig into my life was both infuriating and absurd. I pictured some trench coat guy snapping photos of me at Starbucks or working late at the office. But deep down, I also felt a pang of pity. Richard, with all his wealth and power, lived a calculated life, and now he was paying the price with his daughter's estrangement. A few days later, I got a text from Mark. You won't believe this, he wrote, with a link to an Instagram post from a local news account. It was about a minor scandal in North Shore where wealthy families were accused of hiring PIs to monitor friends or relatives to control their relationships. No names were mentioned, but I immediately thought of Richard. I called Natalie and she confirmed, yeah, my dad's caught up in this, not because of me, but because I sent his letter to a journalist friend. I didn't want revenge, but I wanted the truth out. This twist floored me. Natalie, who once feared upsetting her parents, was now taking them on publicly. I started seeing her differently, not as my ex, but as someone fighting to reclaim her life. I agreed to let her use our story on the condition that my identity stayed anonymous. Thank you, Ryan, she said over the phone, her voice breaking. This means more than you know. Natalie's article was published in a popular Chicago online magazine a few weeks later. It didn't just cover us, but included interviews with others who'd faced family pressure in love. The piece went viral, shared across Twitter and Reddit with thousands of comments from people sharing similar experiences. I read it in my apartment feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. Natalie had turned our pain into a powerful message, and though I hated to admit it, I respected her for it. But the drama didn't end. One evening, while having pizza with Mark in Wicker Park, Natalie walked in. She wasn't alone. A guy my age, in a leather jacket looking like an artist, was with her. Ryan, she said, slightly awkward, didn't expect to see you here. This is David, my friend. David shook my hand, smiling warmly, but I couldn't help a twinge of jealousy, not because I wanted her back, but because his presence reminded me she was moving on just like I was. We chatted briefly and Natalie mentioned David was a documentary filmmaker helping her turn her article into a short film. We want to tell stories like ours, she said, her eyes lighting up. to show people that love shouldn't be controlled by money or status. I nodded, trying to stay composed, but inside I was a mess. When they left, Mark looked at me, raising an eyebrow. "You good man," I forced a smile. "Yeah, just weird." That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about Natalie, David, how our lives had intertwined and were now diverging. I wondered if I was missing something or if this was life's way of reminding me I'd made the right choice by leaving. To calm my mind, I started writing not for anyone else, but for myself. I wrote about my journey, how I learned that a person's worth isn't in their bank account or others' approval. I wrote about Natalie not with resentment, but with understanding that sometimes those who hurt you are struggling too. Months later, I was invited to speak at an architecture workshop at Northwestern University. When I entered the auditorium, I froze. Natalie was in the audience. She'd come to support me, holding a small sign that read, "Congrats, Ryan," the inspiration. After my talk, we chatted in the hallway. "I'm proud of you," she said, smiling, "and I want you to know I'm making that documentary. David and I have shot some great scenes, and I hope you'll watch it when it's done." I nodded, feeling a strange connection, not love, but mutual respect. But then another twist shook everything. One morning, I opened my email and found a message from Caroline, Natalie's mom. Subject, final apology. I hesitated, but opened it. Caroline wrote that she'd read Natalie's article and reflected on how she and Richard treated me. She admitted they were wrong to judge me through a lens of wealth, and they were trying to reconnect with Natalie. But the bombshell was the last part. "Natalie's sick, Ryan. A small tumor, but the doctors say it's treatable." She didn't want you to know, but I think you deserve to because you're still important to her. My heart stopped. Natalie was sick. I sat there staring at the screen, unsure what to do. I wanted to call her, but I was afraid of hurting her. Finally, I sent a short text. "Natalie, I heard from your mom. I don't know what to say, but I'm here if you need me." She replied hours later. "Thanks, Ryan. I'm okay. Just a tough phase. I'll get through it." But her tone, even through text, worried me. I decided to visit her unannounced at her new uptown apartment. When she opened the door, she looked tired but smiled. "You didn't have to do this," she said, inviting me in. Her place was small, filled with books and manuscripts, but cozy. We sat, and she shared about her treatment, like chemo, exhausting days, but she was resilient. "I don't want your pity," she said. "I just want you to know I'm fighting not just for my health, but for myself." I took her hand, the first time in over a year. "I know," I said, "and I believe you'll win." From then, Natalie and I stayed in touch more, not as lovers, but as friends who'd shared a pivotal part of life. I helped with her film project, giving feedback on scenes, even doing an anonymous interview. When the documentary premiered at a Chicago Indie Film Festival, it got a standing ovation. Natalie stood on stage thanking everyone, and when her eyes met mine in the crowd, I knew we'd found a piece we once thought impossible. But life always tests you. One evening while I was home preparing for a new project in Fulton Market, Ethan called. "Ryan, you need to get to the hospital now." Natalie, she fainted while filming. I raced out, heart pounding, praying she'd be okay. At Northwestern Hospital, Natalie was awake, but the doctor said her tumor had grown faster than expected. She needed surgery with no guarantees. I stayed at the hospital all night, holding her hand as she slept. The next morning, she woke weak, but smiling. "You don't have to be here," she whispered. "But I want to," I replied. In that moment, I realized that despite the painful past, I still cared for her not as a lover, but as a person. Natalie's surgery was successful, but recovery would be long. I organized a fundraiser with my firm to cover her medical costs, and Mark and Ethan joined, turning it into a big event in River North. Natalie got stronger and her documentary was picked up by a major streaming platform. She invited me to the online premiere at her apartment, just me, her, and David. When the film ended, she looked at me and said, "Thank you, Ryan, not just for today, but for giving me a chance to make things right." I smiled. Thank you for reminding me people can change. Now I live my life designing buildings, jogging by Lake Michigan, and enjoying nights with friends at Logan Square bars. Natalie and I remain friends, nothing more, but our bond proves that sometimes the deepest wounds can heal not by going back, but by moving forward. I've learned that love isn't about finding perfection, but about finding those who make you want to be your best self. My life keeps moving, but each day seems to bring a new challenge, another hidden corner of the past I thought I'd left behind. After the documentary premiere, I thought Natalie and I had found a balance, a strange but genuine friendship built from the ashes of our old love. But Chicago, with its bustling streets and secrets tucked under neon lights, always finds a way to make you face what you're not ready for. One Friday evening, as I sat in my apartment gazing at the city's glowing skyline, a knock came at my door. I frowned. Nobody drops by unannounced at this hour. When I opened it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Richard Natalie's father stood there in a gray suit, looking older than I remembered, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "Ryan," he said, his voice low and hoarse, "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need to talk, just 5 minutes." I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but the look on his face, not arrogant but almost desperate, made me hesitate. "Fine," I said, opening the door wider. "But 5 minutes." Richard stepped in, glancing around my small but tidy apartment, the place I'd rebuilt my life after leaving his daughter. He didn't sit, just stood in the living room, hands clasped like he was holding himself together. "I know you read my letter," he began, "and I know Natalie told you about what I did, the investigator, the lies. I'm not here to justify it. I'm here because of Natalie." I frowned, a knot of unease forming. "Is she okay?" I asked, thinking of her health. Richard nodded, but his eyes dodged mine. "She's fine physically, but emotionally, not." After the article, the documentary, she's cut us off completely, me and Caroline. She won't talk, won't visit, won't answer calls, and I know it's my fault. I sat on the couch processing his words. "So, what do you want from me to convince her to reconnect with you?" Richard shook his head. "No, I want you to help me understand. Understand why it all fell apart. Understand how you moved on when we tried to destroy you." His words stunned me. Richard, who once saw me as unworthy, was now standing here asking for advice. I let out a dry laugh, incredulous. "You think I have answers? I was just trying to survive Richard. I left because I couldn't stay where I wasn't valued." He looked at me, and for the first time I saw a flicker of sincerity in his eyes. "I was wrong about you, Ryan. I thought money and status were everything. But seeing Natalie fight her illness, reading her article, I realized I lost what matters most, my daughter." He paused, his voice catching, "and I think you're the only one who can help me make things right because you did it. You got back up stronger than ever." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to yell, tell him he had no right to ask for my help after everything. But another part, the part that learned forgiveness isn't about making others feel better, but freeing yourself, made me pause. I'm not promising anything I said, but I'll talk to Natalie, not for you, but for her. Richard nodded, handing me a business card. "If you need anything, call. And Ryan, thank you." He left, leaving me in my apartment with a whirlwind of thoughts. The next day, I texted Natalie, asking if she wanted to grab lunch. She agreed, and we met at a casual diner in Logan Square, the smell of toasted bread and sizzling bacon filling the air. Natalie looked healthier than the last time I saw her, but there was still a fragility to her. You saw my dad, didn't you? She asked straight away. No small talk. I nodded, recounting our conversation. She listened, her hands gripping her water glass, then sighed. I don't know what to do with them, Ryan. Part of me wants to forgive, but another part, I'm scared they'll try to control me again. I looked at her, searching for the right words. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I know holding on to pain only hurts you more. Forgiving doesn't mean letting them back into your life. It means freeing yourself. Natalie stared at me, her eyes glistening. How did you do it? After everything I and my parents did, I shrugged. It wasn't instant, but every day I chose to live for myself, not the past, and you can too. That conversation opened a new phase in our relationship. Natalie started sharing more about her life, her treatment days, filming sessions with David, and new dreams. She wanted to start a small production company focusing on documentaries about social issues. I, in turn, told her about my new project, a green complex in Pilsen aimed at affordable housing for the community. We weren't lovers, but we became like true friends, supporting each other through ups and downs. But then another twist, more shocking than the last. One afternoon, while I was at the Pilsen site overseeing concrete pours, Mark called. You need to check Twitter now, he said, his voice urgent. His big stuff about Natalie. I opened my phone, scrolling through trending hashtags, and my heart stopped. An anonymous account had leaked emails, allegedly between Richard and a Chicago PI firm. The emails not only confirmed he'd stalked me, but revealed he'd done the same to Natalie's previous boyfriends, including the Wall Street guy. The most damning email mentioned Richard trying to undermine my career by spreading rumors that I was unreliable at my firm. I called Natalie immediately, but she didn't pick up. Instead, I got a text, Ryan, I'm sorry, I didn't know about this. I'm trying to handle it. I drove to her apartment, anger and confusion swirling. When she opened the door, she was crying. I had no idea my dad went this far, she said, handing me a glass of water. A colleague found these emails in a larger data leak. I don't know who went public, but I feel responsible for you. I sat trying to stay calm. He tried to ruin my career, Natalie. Not just our relationship, but my life. She nodded, her eyes red. I know. And I'm gonna confront him, but Ryan, I need your help with something. I want to make a follow-up to the documentary telling the whole truth, not just about us, but about how people like my dad use power to control others. Will you join me? I looked at her, unsure if I was ready to expose my life again. But then I thought of others who might be manipulated by family or society. Okay, I said. But this time I want my real name used. I'm done hiding. Making the documentary sequel was an emotional roller coaster. Natalie, David, and I worked together filming interviews in familiar Chicago spots, from Millennium Park to Wicker Park's busy streets. I shared my story, not just of betrayal, but of learning that a person's worth isn't what others think. Natalie, meanwhile, confronted her parents on camera, a scene that silenced the crew. You were wrong, she said, staring into the lens, and I was wrong for listening. But I'm making it right. Not for you, but for me. The film premiered at a New York festival and became a sensation. Reviews in the New York Times and Chicago Tribune praised its honesty and powerful message. But Natalie's family reacted differently. Richard emailed me accusing me of destroying his family's reputation. Caroline called Natalie, begging her to pull the film. But Natalie stood firm. This is the truth she told her mom over the phone, a call I overheard. And you need to accept it. Meanwhile, my career soared. The Pilsen Project won an award from the Chicago Architecture Association, and I was invited to speak at an international conference in San Francisco. But one evening, as I prepared my presentation, Natalie called. Ryan, I need to talk. Big news. Her voice trembled, and I knew another twist was coming. "Meet me at the old bar in Logan Square," she asked. I agreed, though part of me dreaded what was next. When I arrived, Natalie was in a corner with David. But this time there was no awkwardness. She looked at me, her eyes bright. "Ryan, David, and I just got word. Our film's been nominated for a major award, an international film festival in London. And they want all three of us to go." I was floored. "All three," David nodded, grinning. "You're part of the story, Ryan. You have to come." I sat processing a trip to London with Natalie and David for an award about a film chronicling my greatest pain. It was beyond anything I'd imagined. But the drama didn't stop. As we prepared for the trip, I got a call from an unknown number. A strange voice said, "Ryan, this is a friend of Richard's. He's planning to sue you and Natalie over the film. Thought you should know." I nearly dropped the phone. "Sue us?" After everything he'd done, I called Natalie, and she broke down hearing the news. "I can't believe my dad would go this far," she said, her voice cracking. "But I'm not stopping. This film matters more than anyone." We hired a lawyer, a friend of Mark's at a big downtown Chicago firm. The lawyer reassured us Richard's lawsuit had little chance as the film was factual and protected by free speech. But the process was stressful. Natalie faced her parents in a tense family meeting where Richard admitted acting out of love but refused to drop the suit. Caroline, for the first time, sided with Natalie. "Enough, Richard," she said, per Natalie's recount. "We lost her once. Do you want to lose her forever?" Eventually, Richard dropped the suit, but not before publicly apologizing to Natalie on LinkedIn, a move that sent Chicago's elite buzzing. The London trip was a milestone. Our film didn't just win, it was offered international distribution by a major studio. At the post-ceremony party, I stood on the hotel balcony overlooking the Thames, reflecting on my journey. Natalie and David joined me each with a glass of wine. "You okay?" Natalie asked. I nodded, smiling. "Yeah, just can't believe we've come this far." David raised his glass. "To stories worth telling and the people brave enough to tell them." Back in Chicago, I got an unexpected offer. A local university wanted me to teach a part-time course on sustainable design. I accepted, and in my first class, I shared my story, not to boast, but to inspire students that they could overcome any challenge. Natalie attended one session, sitting in the back, clapping when I finished. Afterward, we walked along the Chicago River talking about the future. "I'm thinking of moving to New York," she said. David got a job offer there, and I want to try bigger projects." I felt a pang, but smiled. "You'll kill it. Just call when you visit Chicago, okay?" She nodded, then hugged me unexpectedly. "Thank you, Ryan, for everything." I hugged back, feeling a gentle but complete closure. She walked away, and I stood there watching the river sparkle, knowing that no matter what drama life threw next, I'd learned to stand tall. I wasn't just an architect or Natalie's ex. I was Ryan, a man who chose himself, and that was my greatest victory. Continuing with more twists and developments as requested, keeping the narrative grounded in American culture and the themes of loyalty and self-worth. So the story keeps going like a relentless Chicago wind that carries new surprises just when you think you've found solid ground. After Natalie's hug by the river, I thought we'd settled into a quiet rhythm, a friendship forged from shared scars, a mutual respect that didn't need rekindling old flames. But the city, with its skyscrapers casting long shadows and its secrets whispered in smoky bars, had more in store. A new chapter was about to unfold, one that would test my resolve, uncover buried truths, and push me to redefine what it means to move forward. A few weeks after Natalie's departure for New York, I was preparing for a lecture at Northwestern University when a strange email landed in my inbox. The sender was Laura Bennett, investigative reporter, Chicago Tribune. The subject line was chilling. Regarding Richard and his company, my pulse quickened as I opened it. Laura wrote that she was investigating a financial scandal involving Richard's investment firm, where he was CEO. Sources suggested he might be linked to money laundering through real estate deals in the loop. But the kicker was the last sentence. We believe he targeted your career to keep you away from major Chicago real estate projects. Would you be willing to meet and share your story? I sat there staring at the screen, feeling the ground shift beneath me. Richard didn't just hire a PI to spy on me or spread rumors to tarnish my reputation. He targeted my career for bigger financial motives. I called Mark my anchor in chaos. Are you kidding me? He shouted when I filled him in. This guy's not just a controlling dad. He's a criminal. I let out a dry laugh, but my chest felt heavy. I don't know what to do, Mark. If this is true, it could destroy Natalie's family. She's just recovering, just finding herself. Mark went quiet, then said, you don't owe them anything, Ryan, but if you want to help Natalie, at least find out the truth. Meet this reporter, but be careful. I agreed, and the next day I met Laura at a cozy coffee shop in Old Town where the scent of waffles and soft jazz clashed with the gravity of our conversation. Laura, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, placed a stack of documents before me. This is what we've got, she said, pointing to emails, contracts, and internal memos. Richard used his firm to hide illegal transactions, and when you started rising in the architecture world, especially with the Riverside project, he worried you'd stumble onto his shady real estate deals. I flipped through the papers, my blood boiling. One email from Richard to an associate read, make sure Ryan Carter doesn't get assigned to loop projects. He's too curious, and his firm's working with contractors tied to us. I looked at Laura, struggling to stay calm. So what did he do? Beyond the rumors, Laura sipped her coffee and replied, we have evidence he paid an employee at your firm to feed false info about your performance. Lucky for you, your boss didn't buy it, but without Riverside's success, you could have been fired. I sat back, grappling with the fact that Richard hadn't just tried to ruin my relationship with Natalie, but the career I'd built with sweat and tears. What should I do? I asked Laura. She shrugged. Your call, Ryan. We're publishing this story with or without you. But your story, how you overcame his manipulation, could inspire others, and it might protect Natalie if she gets dragged into this. I left the coffee shop with a storm of emotions. I wanted to talk to Natalie, but I was terrified of hurting her more. Finally, I texted her asking to meet at a bar in Wicker Park, a place we used to frequent in our early days. When I arrived, Natalie was already there in a long wool coat, looking tired, but resolute. You know about my dad, don't you? She asked, cutting to the chase. I nodded, recounting my meeting with Laura and the documents. She listened, her hands clutching her wine glass, then broke down. I can't believe he went this far, she said, her voice breaking. I thought he was just controlling me, but hurting you like this, I don't know how to face it. I took her hand, trying to comfort her. This isn't your fault, Natalie. But you need to decide, what do you want to do about this? The reporter's going public and it could ruin your dad. I don't want you hurt more. She wiped her tears, looking at me with a newfound resolve. I want the truth out, she said, not just for you, but for everyone else he might have harmed. But Ryan, I need you with me, not as a boyfriend, but as a friend. I can't do this alone. I agreed. And from there, Natalie and I entered a tense but meaningful phase. We worked with Laura, providing more details about Richard's actions from the PI to the workplace rumors. Meanwhile, I kept up with my work, but the drama kept coming. One evening in my office, a former colleague, once close but recently distant, walked in. Ryan, we need to talk, he said, his voice shaky. I was the one who took Richard's money to badmouth you. I'm sorry. I needed the cash, but I didn't think it'd go this far. His confession hit like a punch. I wanted to lash out, but I just shook my head. Why come clean now? He looked down. I read Natalie's article, saw you on TV talking about Pilsen. You didn't deserve that. I've contacted the reporter and I'm telling the truth. I didn't know whether to thank or curse him, but I nodded. Thanks for being honest, but don't reach out again. He left and I sat there thinking how truth, however painful, always finds a way out. Laura's article finally dropped and it was explosive. The Chicago Tribune's front page screamed, Loop financial scandal, investment CEO accused of manipulation and money laundering. Richard's name was everywhere alongside details of how he targeted me and others to protect his interests. Chicago was abuzz and social media erupted with hashtags like hashtag justice for Ryan and hashtag expose the elite. Natalie and I were swept into a media storm receiving both support and criticism. Some called us heroes, while Richard's old friends accused us of tearing apart a family. Amid this, Natalie faced personal drama. Carolyn showed up at her apartment, begging her to stop before it's too late. But Natalie didn't waver. Mom, I love you, she said, per her later recount, but I can't live in lies anymore. If you want to be in my life, you have to accept the truth. Caroline left, but days later she sent a long letter admitting she knew about some of Richard's actions, but stayed silent to preserve her social status. I'm proud you're braver than me, she wrote. The letter made Natalie cry all night, but it also lifted a weight, like part of her burden was gone. But the biggest twist came soon after. One morning, jogging by Lake Michigan, my phone rang. It was Laura. Ryan, brace yourself, she said. We've uncovered a new player, a partner of Richard's, who's talking to the FBI. They're launching a federal investigation and they want to speak with you and Natalie. I stopped breathless, the world spinning. A federal investigation. I called Natalie and we met at our lawyer's office downtown. The lawyer, a calm man named Tom, explained that the FBI was probing not just Richard, but a network of wealthy Chicago investors who might have used real estate to launder money. Natalie and I agreed to cooperate, handing over every email document and detail we had. The process stretched over months with grueling interviews and sleepless nights. During one FBI meeting, an agent revealed Richard had tried contacting me before his arrest, leaving a voicemail they'd seized. I asked to hear it, and Richard's voice came through frail and remorseful. Ryan, I know you won't forgive me, but I need to say I'm sorry. Not because I'm caught, but because I hurt Natalie and you. Take care of her if you still care. I sat there unsure how to feel. His regret seemed real, but it was far too late. Richard was eventually indicted for money laundering and fraud. His trial was a Chicago spectacle, with reporters swarming the courthouse like vultures. Natalie refused to attend, but followed the news, and I stayed with her watching reports on her apartment TV. When the verdict came, 7 years in prison, Natalie sobbed, but she also said, this is justice, Ryan, not just for us, but for everyone he hurt. Caroline, meanwhile, started working with a charity to atone, and her bond with Natalie slowly mended, though it'd never be the same. Through this chaos, Natalie and I grew closer, not romantically, but as friends who'd survived hell together. We threw a small party at my place to celebrate the documentary's Netflix release with Mark David and a few close friends. As we raised our glasses, Natalie looked at me smiling. We did it, Ryan. We told our story, and it changed everything. I nodded, feeling a pride I'd never known. Yeah, I said, and we're still writing new chapters. But life, as I've said, never lets you rest. One morning, preparing for a new project in Southside, I received a handwritten letter with no return address. Inside was a brief note in Richard's familiar script, Ryan, I'm writing from prison. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know you changed Natalie's life and mine. Keep being the man I could never be. The letter left me stunned. I didn't reply, but I kept it in a drawer, a reminder that even those who hurt you most can find a flicker of light. I stood on my apartment's rooftop gazing at Chicago's skyline glowing under the sunset, its skyscrapers twinkling like beacons. My journey with Natalie, Richard, and myself had taken me through storms I never thought I'd survive. From the moment Natalie said her parents thought I wasn't enough, to the shocking revelations of Richard's schemes, to the healing path Natalie and I carved, I learned that life isn't about finding a perfect ending, but about rising after every fall. But the story, which I thought was over so many times, had one final chapter, a chapter that not only closed the past, but opened a new future, not with Natalie, but with myself. One winter evening, months after Richard's last letter, I got a text from Natalie. She was in Chicago visiting Caroline, now a vocal supporter of local charities. "Ryan, I have a surprise for you," she wrote. "Meet me at Millennium Park tonight, 7 p.m. Okay. I smiled, curious but cautious. Natalie had a knack for surprises, and though we'd found peace and friendship, I wasn't sure I was ready for more drama. But I agreed, bundling up in a sweater and scarf, stepping into January's biting cold. When I reached Millennium Park, the lights from Cloudgate the Bean glimmered on the thin snow covering the ground. Natalie stood there in a bright red coat, her smile as radiant as the day we met. Beside her was David and a small group I recognized from the documentary producers, a few supporting actors, and Laura from the Tribune. "You made it," Natalie exclaimed, rushing to hug me. "I wanted you to be the first to know." "Know what I asked?" Scanning the smiling, secretive crowd. Natalie pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to me. "Open it." Inside was an invitation, not for a party, but for the launch of a new charity, the Truth and Triumph Foundation. It read, "Founded by Natalie Harper with support from Ryan Carter and survivors of family manipulation and pressure. This foundation helps young people reclaim their self-worth and build independent lives." I stared at Natalie floored. "You did this for us." She nodded, her eyes shining. "After everything my parents control, my dad's schemes, and how you rose stronger, I realized we could help others. I used the documentary's earnings to start this, and I want you as an honorary co-founder, not to pull you into my life, but because you inspired it." The crowd clapped and Laura stepped forward, handing me a mic. "Say something, Ryan," she said, grinning mischievously. I stood under Millennium Park's lights, emotions surging. I don't know what to say. I started, my voice shaky. When Natalie said her parents thought I wasn't good enough, I thought my life was over. But I learned your worth isn't what others think. It's how you choose to live each day. Natalie, thank you for turning our pain into something meaningful. And thank you all for reminding me we're stronger than we know. The crowd cheered and Natalie hugged me again, whispering, "We did it, Ryan." The foundation's launch followed at a downtown conference center. Natalie and I stood on stage sharing our story with hundreds from young people battling family pressure to donors eager to support our mission. Caroline was there publicly apologizing to Natalie, a moment that hushed the room before erupting in applause. Richard from prison sent a letter, read aloud, supporting the foundation and admitting he'd learned from his mistakes too late. It ended with a line that chilled me, "Ryan, you're the man I wish I could have been. Keep guiding my daughter, even as a friend." After the event, Natalie and I sat at a River North bar, sipping whiskey and reflecting. "I'm heading back to New York," she said softly, "but this foundation will keep us connected no matter where I am. You'll keep Chicago shining, right?" I laughed, raising my glass. Yeah. "And you keep shaking up New York. But visit, okay?" She nodded and we clinked glasses, a perfect moment, sealing our story, not as lovers, but as two people who'd changed the world just a bit. But life, as I've said, loves a final twist. A week later, at my office, preparing for a new Englewood project, an email arrived from an unknown sender claiming to be a friend of Richard's from the past. It read, Check your account, Ryan. Richard left a final gift. I opened my banking app and my heart stopped. A massive sum, hundreds of thousands of dollars, had been deposited with a note from Richard Harper for the Truth and Triumph Foundation. Thank you, Ryan. I called Natalie and she was as shocked. When did he do this? She asked. We learned Richard, before his sentencing, had secretly set up a trust releasing the funds only if Natalie and I used them for charity. We used every cent to expand the foundation building support centers in Chicago, New York, and beyond, where young people could find help escaping family or societal pressure. We named the first Chicago center Carter Harper House, a name that made us both laugh at its oddity. At the opening, I stood before the crowd seeing Natalie, Caroline, Mark, and David in the audience and said, "This isn't a story of revenge or defeat. It's about choosing yourself, choosing truth, and choosing to make a difference. Thank you all for being part of it." Now, as I write this, I'm still in Chicago designing buildings, teaching, and jogging by Lake Michigan each morning. Natalie in New York is a renowned documentary producer, and we talk often, sharing foundation updates and life stories. Richard from prison sends short letters, not for forgiveness, but about books he's read and lessons learned. Caroline's a different mother, helping Natalie run the foundation. And me, I've found a peace I never thought possible. If you're still watching, pause and ask yourself, what have you learned from your dramas, your hurts, your triumphs? How have you chosen yourself? Share your story in the comments, because every story is a spark for someone else. Hit like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going. Life's full of twists, but I've learned you can always write your own ending, one worthy of who you are. AITA